Did you know, according to StatCast, the average baseball MLB player throws 86 miles an hour? That's crazy. And now you have to have the same control as a person driving a car, because that's a dangerous speed. How do they handle that? How do you get to that point? What's the basics behind it? Well, you'll find out. I'm Coach T, and this is Behind the Ball. There are 3 drills that will cover the basics of throwing. So, let's take to the field. Welcome to the field. Now, the first very important thing about throwing is the grip of the ball. Now, we always want to throw with what we call a 4-seam grip because it flies the straightest and the fastest. Now, the 4-seam grip is you take this horseshoe, you take your 2 fingers, your middle, and your pointer, and you put them over top of this horseshoe, and that's your 4-seam grip. And you put your thumb underneath. Now notice I'm not choking the ball, I'm not killing it. There's this gap right in behind the ball because I want it to flow nicely off of my hand. I don't want it to stop halfway, and we got to create a nice spin. The important thing with wrist flick is to make sure that you get used to the motion of flicking and snapping the ball downward, and making sure that your hands get used to the grip. Focus on keeping the pressure in your fingertips. That's about it. So with dart toss, incorporate wrist flick as well as the movement your forearm will make. Again, making sure to snap your arm forward and really give that flick of the wrist. Lastly, making sure to point at your target. Now, you can only be as accurate as you allow yourself to be, and the more you point towards your target through the throw, the more likely you are to be accurate. So with this last drill, the T-pose, there's a lot more going on than the last 2. Obviously now we're into working the entire body. So we're going to break it down. We'll focus on the upper body. As you can see here, with the arms up in the T-pose, everything's nice and aligned above the shoulders, and your front elbow is pointed at your target. This will keep us aligned with our hip, so that when our hips move around, which is our power, our arms will move around with it simultaneously to pull that force around and over the top. Now, important things to remember is that the ball is behind you and facing behind you, almost as if to wave by to whomever's back there. And you're going to want to turn and find your release point, point at the target that you're throwing at, and very important to follow through. A lot of overthrows happen because throwers aren't following through, and so they stop at a higher point than they initially intend to. Now we move on to the bottom half. The bottom half is now your hips and your legs and your butt, and this is where a lot of your power comes from. Actually, almost all of your power when it comes to throwing as well as hitting and pitching, but we'll get into those 2 later on. With the art of throwing, when you are coming through, if you notice, my foot is pointing away from my target, but as I'm turning my hips, my front foot turns to point at my target. Again, just another point of accuracy that everything points towards the target. As the elbow comes up and starts to turn, my toe points towards the target, and as I do that, my hips are coming around. Notice I'm more on my back leg, and that my back hip is what pushes the motion forward, and that's about it. So those are 3 drills. Remember, the more you practice those, the better you're going to be at throwing and your accuracy thereof. Remember, your grip is important and the spin of the ball. If you've enjoyed our content, please share so we can grow this team and this community. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Deep Dive into the Basics. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.